Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving back into some malicious compliance stories. Today we've got 3 tales of people who took rules, policies, and expectations literally and let the consequences speak for themselves. One involves an employee who stopped working after hours because you signed the policy, another a traveler who learned that saving money just creates paperwork, and the last a great-grandfather who decided exactly where his house would go. They reminded me I signed the policy, so I stopped working after hours. I'm currently deep in my malicious compliance era at work, and honestly, I didn't set out to be here. It started last week when I got absolutely torn apart for working from home for a few hours so I could finish urgent materials for a conference I was attending the following week. This wasn't me trying to dodge the office or avoid coworkers. It was me trying to meet a deadline that directly benefited the company. I was explicitly told that I could not work from home without prior approval. The phrase, "you signed the policy," was repeated at me more than once as if I'd committed some kind of corporate betrayal. I calmly pointed out that my role regularly requires work outside standard office hours and often from home because that's the nature of the job. The response didn't change. "You signed the policy." That sentence stuck with me. I'm a salaried employee. I'm not clocking in and out. My employer's not paying me to warm a chair from 8:30 to 5:30. They're paying me to do a specialized job that sometimes takes 30 hours a week and sometimes takes 50, depending on deadlines and complexity. Historically, there's been flexibility on both sides, which worked well for everyone. But if we're going to get technical about signatures and policy language, I can absolutely do technical. So now when I leave the office, I leave the office. My work-issued cell phone stays in my desk drawer. It does not come home with me. I do not glance at it on weekends. I do not quickly check something. I do not just respond to one email. I signed the policy. That first weekend was strangely quiet. On Saturday afternoon, my personal phone rang. It was another manager asking if I could approve some billing rates that were due to go out. It would have taken me maybe 5 minutes. Instead, I took a breath and said, "I'm not allowed to work from home without approval. I'll handle it Monday when I'm back in the office." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I wasn't rude. I wasn't sarcastic. I simply repeated the rule that had been drilled into me days earlier. Everything would technically be late, but I signed the policy. It cost them nothing to let me work flexibly. I'm already paid a fixed salary. There's no overtime to argue about, no extra expense involved. But if they want strict compliance over common sense, I can provide that. Monday came and went, no emergency meeting, no angry emails. The billing rates eventually got pushed back a week. Someone else apparently edited the PDF reports to get them out the door. The sky did not fall. The world kept turning. That realization was clarifying. For years, I'd been logging back in from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. when things piled up. I would tweak reports, approve rates, fix minor bugs, answer emails, and smooth over small problems before they became big ones. I did it because I cared about doing the job well. I did it because the flexibility allowed me to balance family obligations and volunteer work. It felt mutual. Apparently, it wasn't. So I made a few changes. First, the work phone no longer comes home. It physically stays in the office. The first evening I walked out without it felt both freeing and unsettling, like leaving the house without your wallet. By the third evening, I realized how much background tension I'd been carrying. Second, I informed my team and any managers who might reasonably need me that once I leave the office, I'm offline. If something's urgent, it needs to be handled during business hours or escalated appropriately through the channels the policy provides. I'm no longer the unofficial after-hours safety net. Third, I updated my resume. That part felt heavier than the rest. This wasn't some dramatic anti-work rebellion. I actually liked the flexibility the role used to provide. I liked being trusted to manage my workload like an adult. But when trust is replaced with policy weaponization, it changes the equation. A few days later, I received a call from a recruiter I'd spoken to months earlier. The timing was almost funny. We had a serious conversation this time. A week later, I had a verbal offer. I'm now waiting on the official letter before submitting my notice. No one at my current job has mentioned the late rates. No one has brought up my refusal to work from home. From their perspective, maybe nothing significant changed. From mine, everything did. That's the quiet part. They probably haven't even noticed the shift yet. The after-hours work was invisible to them when you were doing it, and it's invisible now that you've stopped. The only difference is the billing rates got delayed once and someone else had to handle it. They got exactly what they asked for, strict compliance, and they have no idea what they lost. The irony is that I would have continued giving them that extra effort indefinitely if they hadn't decided to flex policy as a show of control. Instead, they reminded me that I signed a document, so I'm honoring it exactly as written. When I do put in my notice, it'll be polite and professional. There won't be a dramatic speech about flexibility or appreciation. I won't point out that hiring and onboarding someone new will cost far more than letting me answer emails from my couch. I won't mention the late-night hours they quietly benefited from. They wanted strict compliance. They wanted the rule book followed to the letter. That's exactly what they got. And now they'll get my resignation too. And our second story. I was scolded for saving my company hotel costs during a work trip. A few months ago, I had to travel for work to one of our regional sites a couple of hours away from my house. It's a place I've been to often enough that the hotel staff recognize me and automatically hand me the Wi-Fi password without asking. Recently, though, our company had decided we were hemorrhaging money and needed cost containment initiatives, which is corporate for we hired new financial people who need to justify their existence. Part of the new system required a funding letter from the finance department before any travel. It didn't matter that my supervisor had approved the trip or that the work was mandatory for a live project. No funding letter, no expenses reimbursed. So I filled out the forms, waited for the approvals, and eventually got a single funding letter covering my travel window. Fine, hoop jumped. I drove up, checked into my usual hotel, got settled, and knocked out several days of work without issue. About halfway through the trip, my schedule unexpectedly opened up. A project meeting got pushed, and a few site visits were delayed until the following week. Suddenly, I had 3 days where I technically didn't need to be there. Now, I live about 2.5 hours away. That's not a quick grocery run, but it's not cross-country either, so I did some quick math. If I checked out of the hotel, drove home for the weekend, and then drove back up when work resumed, the company would save on several nights of hotel charges and multiple days of per diem. I'd get time with my family. It seemed like common sense. I packed up, checked out properly, and drove home. When the trip was over, I submitted my travel claim the way I always do. A few days later, I got an email from finance with the subject line, "Discrepancy, travel claim." That's never a good sign. Apparently, because I had left and then returned within the same authorized travel window, the system flagged it as 2 separate trips. The funding letter, I had only authorized 1 trip. I replied, both legs fall within the authorized travel dates. The total cost is actually lower than if I'd stayed in the hotel continuously. Their response was clinical and unbending. The funding letter does not specify 2 trips. You require separate funding documentation. I stared at the screen for a solid minute. So, I wrote back, you're telling me that by saving the company money, I created a compliance issue. The reply came from someone who had clearly never left a spreadsheet in their life. Travel must align strictly with funding authorization. That's when it escalated. Because the trip was technically split, reimbursement stalled. Meanwhile, the company credit card charges had posted. Policy requires employees to pay off the balance if reimbursement hasn't processed by the due date. So while finance argued over semantics, I paid several $1,000s out of my own account to avoid interest and credit hits. For a month and a half, I chased approvals. Emails flew between my supervisor, finance, and someone in upper management who probably wished we'd all disappear. At one point, I was asked to provide a written explanation for why I had returned home during authorized downtime. I wrote to reduce lodging and per diem costs while remaining available for the following week's scheduled work. Eventually, after enough back and forth that probably cost more in salary time than my entire hotel stay would have, they relented. The expenses were reallocated. The reimbursement came through. My interest-free loan to the company was repaid. I learned something important, though. Efficiency is not always appreciated. Compliance always is. A few weeks later, another trip came up. Same regional site, same hotel, same process. This time I received exactly 1 funding letter again, covering a similar block of dates. I drove up and worked the first part of the week right on schedule. A few meetings shifted, and I found myself staring at a stretch of downtime in the middle of the authorized window. 3 full days where I technically did not need to be physically present. I looked at my options. Option 1, check out, drive home, drive back, risk triggering another funding apocalypse. Option 2, stay checked into the hotel, let the room sit empty, collect per diem as authorized, and drive home anyway without telling finance I'd physically left town. I chose option 2. I left my clothes in the room, I left the do not disturb sign on the door, I made sure housekeeping wouldn't flag anything unusual, then I drove home and spent the weekend on my couch. Right now, as I type this, the company's paying for an empty hotel room. They're also paying my per diem for those days because the funding letter covers the dates and I'm technically in travel status. I'll drive back up before work resumes, walk into that same hotel room, and continue the trip as if I never left. No split trips, no compliance violations, no funding discrepancies. A friend at work asked me why I didn't just do what I did the first time and save the money again. I told him about the month and a half of reimbursement purgatory and the thousands I floated on my credit card. He shook his head and said, "So you're just letting them pay for nothing?" "Not nothing," I said. "Policy adherence." Here's the thing. I don't even enjoy wasting money. I genuinely thought I was helping the first time, but after being told repeatedly that I must align strictly with funding documentation, I decided to align strictly with funding documentation. The funding letter says I'm traveling from Monday to the following Friday. It does not say I must physically sleep in that hotel room every night. It does not say I cannot briefly return home during authorized downtime. It does not differentiate between presence and status. So I'm in travel status. If anyone from finance ever asks whether I was physically in the hotel every single night, I'll answer carefully and truthfully. I was on authorized travel for the entire window. The hotel was reserved and available, work resumed as scheduled, no policy was violated. That's the beautiful part. They taught you the lesson themselves. Efficiency doesn't matter, saving money doesn't matter, only compliance matters. So you gave them compliance. An empty room, paid per diem, no rules broken. They'll never even know they're paying for a bed you're not sleeping in, and if they ever ask, you followed the funding letter exactly. Meanwhile, the company's paying for 4 nights of an empty room that could have been avoided. They're paying per diem for meals, I'm eating in my own kitchen, and the same finance department that scolded me for misaligned travel documentation will probably celebrate their quarterly cost compliance metrics. When I drive back up tomorrow, I'll swipe my key card, toss my bag on the bed, and go to work like nothing happened. If my schedule opens up, I won't even hesitate. I won't check out, I won't try to be efficient, I won't try to save them a dime. I will follow the funding letter exactly, and somewhere in an office full of spreadsheets, someone will likely get praised for their excellent oversight. Cheers to the bean counters. They wanted precision? They got it. And our last story. My husband's great-grandfather is leaving me his £2 million house. His family's furious because they expected to sell it and split the money. So I'm at a bit of an impasse, and it's causing so much friction between everyone involved, but I genuinely don't think I'm wrong here. It's very complicated, so I'll do my best to make it make sense. I've been married to my husband, Tom, for a year, and we've been together for 4 years. I'm 26 and he's 28, if that's important. We're in the Northeast, England. Since I met Tom and was introduced to the family home, I loved it. It's old and cluttered with memories and decorated very rustic and cozy and warm. Great-granddad hasn't changed the decor since his late wife passed, and the two of them put in so much work and effort over the years to make it a beautiful home. Every week when Tom's in the office, I'd drive over to his great-grandfather's and help him tend to his veggie patches and do some general maintenance on the house with him. And then we'd sit down with some tea and soap catch-ups. It's always very chill and genuinely enjoyable time. A few weeks ago, he mentioned that he was updating his will and asked if it was okay to have me inherit the house and land. I was beyond shocked, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited. Before I could ask him why, he said that he wanted to leave it to me because I always make time to humor an old man. He said I could pay off the inheritance tax without too much bother and the home wouldn't be sold. He said he loves his family, but they'd sell it and use the money to pay off the inheritance tax. I'm not sure of how inheritance tax works. He also mentioned other issues, such as it being easier to contest if Most of his estate was left to one blood relative, Tom. Again, I haven't the foggiest. He expressed that he wanted the home to be filled up with kids someday because we would often joke about how many children my husband and I would have. I'd always go ridiculously high, but Tom and I realistically agree we want a good few, so 4 or 5 if we can and are in position to. I'm an only child, and based on my experiences, I didn't enjoy being one. We actually had a very nice talk about how he and his late wife wanted many children, but she struggled with fertility, and they were lucky to get the one they did. I agreed to his request and was very grateful to him for the thought, on the condition I talked to Tom about it first. Tom was hesitant because it would be stopping the rest of the family from a fortune, but soon agreed because of the sentimentality and wanting to keep the home in the family for his great-grandparents, knowing the others would surely sell it. Now to the uneasy part. As you can imagine, if sold on today's market, the home would be very expensive. The last time it was looked over, it was estimated at $1.3 million. And that was before my husband and I married. Nowadays, it'll probably be closer to $2 million with the ever-rising housing costs. So about $600K if we calculated right, which is unlikely. He's put aside more than half of that, so all I'll have to do is pay the remainder. When other members of the family found out that he had updated his will like this, I was enemy number one. Everyone was expecting to sell the house and use the money to pay off the tax, and still have over $1 million left between them. The home was supposed to go to Granddad's daughter, my husband's grandmother, but she passed before I came into the picture. The ones arguing are my husband's auntie and 2 uncles and their children, 5 between them. They've called me every name under the sun at this point, including that I'm preying on an old senile man. That's hilarious to me because all of them have always been the ones to say how clear-minded he is for his age. Funny how that changes now. The most hurtful one is that I'm a gold digger and after the family money just because I was raised on a council estate. The house is still his. He gets to decide what happens to it. The fact that they've already spent it in their heads doesn't make it theirs. He sees what they do with it, sell it, split it, forget the memories. He's choosing someone who will actually live in it, fill it with kids, keep it in the family the way he wants. That's not gold digging. That's listening. On one hand, I get what they're saying. It's a lot of money to be missing out on, but I also sort of feel as if it isn't their money to miss. Like, Granddad has clearly said he doesn't want the house sold, and he's making moves to do that. I'm not sure. I don't think I'm being an a-hole here because this is what he wants, and he's given good reasoning. But I see how some people would suffer because of it. Also, I'd like to point out that no one vying for the sale is short on money, so it isn't as if they're in dire straits. If that were the case, I would feel worse about it. Let's talk about who really won. Story 1 was invisible labor made visible. The employer wanted strict policy adherence, so the employee stopped donating nights and weekends. The work phone stays in the drawer, the after-hours fix is stopped. They'll never know what they lost because it was invisible when they had it. But the employee is updating their resume, and that's the part they won't see coming. Story 2 was efficiency punished. The traveler tried to save the company money by going home during downtime. Finance responded with a month and a half of reimbursement hell. So now, empty hotel room, paid per diem, perfect compliance. The company's paying for a bed no one sleeps in, and the bean counters will never know. But story 3 wins, not because of the money, though $2 million is life-changing, but because of the intent. The great-grandfather isn't being spiteful. He's not punishing anyone. He just knows his family. He knows they'd sell the house the moment he's gone, split the proceeds, and let the memories dissolve. So he's leaving it to someone who will actually live there, fill it with kids, keep the garden going, honor what he and his wife built. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.